What is up, my party people? Welcome back to another episode of the C2C Podcast. And in this episode, I want to talk about how you can find your voice and be genuine and authentic inside of your business. And I wanted to do an episode on this. After speaking with my wife, she's like, hey, this is something you should probably have on your podcast. So I said, yes, you are correct, dear, because she's right most of the times, right? For those of you who have wives, I was like, you are correct. And I went on, and now I'm here doing this episode. I have a lot of conversations inside of my networking groups, inside of conversations one-on-one with other business owners. And the question that I get from a lot of them is, have you ever taken speaking lessons before? Like, who taught you how to speak? Because whenever I'm doing presentations and networking, whenever I do master classes, even when I'm sharing stories or I'm having conversations in one-to-ones, a lot of people tend to say that the way that I speak and the way that I communicate my message comes off very different. So I take it as a compliment for sure. I love the fact that people think that I had a coach for speaking. But my answer to that is no. No one has ever taught me how to speak before. I just have a natural form of speaking. And it's because the reason why I speak very well, it's because it is my own voice, my own tone, and no one has ever influenced my way of speaking. And whenever I tell people that, there's kind of a look of confusion, which is like, what does that actually mean? And this is where the episode starts, which is the key of how we can be authentic in our business and how we can develop our own voice. You see, usually when it comes to coaching or mentorships, or when it comes to learning other things, whether it's in your life or in your business, we tend to be influenced by our teachers or in the places that we're taught. And what ends up happening is the thing that influences us becomes the thing that we start to speak through. We take on that natural lens. And so if you learn from a teacher, you tend to speak like the teacher. If you read a book, you tend to use the words inside the book. And so what happens is throughout that process of speaking through those lenses, you start to lose your voice. And it's not just the lens of speaking, which we can lose our voice. It is tons of other lenses, and I'll talk about that later, but on the speaking perspective. So when I share with people, the reason why I'm a good speaker is because no one taught me how to speak. It's not that I didn't learn lessons on how to present well, different tips and tricks to be able to share a story. It doesn't mean that I didn't practice a bunch of speeches and they go terrible at the very beginning. Like, that is all the requirement of growth. One thing though is, regardless of who taught me things on how to do sales or how to sell or how to create a masterclass, just because I learned the information doesn't mean that I then started to regurgitate the information and operate like them. Speaking is one of the very few things that I have left uniquely my own. And I would also argue the way that I operate inside of Coach to Coach and the way that I built my business is also very unique. I don't talk the way that other people talk. And even though I work with tons of coaches and mentors, I use their lens and then I set aside their lens and I carve my own unique path. So from a speaking perspective, a lot of the reasons why people think the way I speak is very genuine and very authentic is because it doesn't sound like anything anyone has ever heard before. And I actually want to share a couple of speaking tips with you guys because you're speaking with clients, you speak to get more business connections, you're speaking to get referrals, you're speaking on masterclasses. This is going to be very beneficial for you anyways because you're speaking every single day. Technically, life is an entire speaking engagement. When it comes to speaking, you want to make sure that the message that you're sharing and the person receiving the message ends up coming together to the same conclusion at the same time. So here's what I mean by this. A lot of people, when they speak, healthcare professionals specifically, they tend to talk and arrive to the conclusion before the client or the person does that's in front of them. So what does that mean? Usually, we can picture this like a doctor. A patient comes in, they're asking questions, they're curious. So the doctor starts sharing a lot of information, but they're sharing it in doctors' words, not in regular people's words. They're using big fancy words. They're really elongating these points, and they're talking right over that person. And then they say, this is your diagnosis. And the person spends a lot of time doing catch up, and then they almost feel foolish or stupid at the end because you beat them to the punch. Now they're almost embarrassed to ask questions, or there's a level of disconnect because they felt like you had to hold their hand through the process. Now, let's flip that and take the inverse. The inverse is when the person listening to your message gets to the conclusion before you give the conclusion. This becomes a person who stops listening because they think they already have the answer. They're like, I already know this, or I know where they're going with this. A great example of this is when you watch a movie. Sometimes you will watch a movie. Hallmark movies are classic for this, okay? You watch a movie and the plot is so predictable. About 15 minutes in, you go, she's going to marry that guy and I know exactly who the villain is. And so the plot is ruined. Because you've already assumed the answer, you already assume you have all of the information, you now fully stop watching the movie. You're not actually watching, you're not actually tuning in because you are predicted or you assume what the end is going to be. Basically, you beat the story to that punchline. And that's a bad plot because if any time you're sharing something or you're speaking, the person comes to the conclusion before you can present them the conclusion, they're going to think that they know more than you. And so they're going to say, I already know this, and they're going to dismiss the information. The sweet spot in speaking is when your message and their realization of that message arrive at the same time. It's someone who's presenting and you're fully engaged and you're listening to the conversation, and then they hit you with a line and you have a realization. And then they validate that realization by saying, you probably realize this. This is where you go, holy crap, I've really connected with that speaker. And tons of speakers do this well in many different industries. Tony Robbins is a great example. When you listen to Tony, anytime he shares something, he can give you a really realistic example, but simplify it in a way where someone goes, oh, I really get that. And so you connect with the message. And by showing up and arriving with the message and the messenger at the same time, that's where trust is built and where speaking becomes something that's really impactful or really meaningful. Another great example of a person who's good for this is Neil deGrasse Tyson, the scientist. Okay, and don't quote me, I think is the name in the center. I think it's deGrasse. But Mr. Tyson is a world-renowned scientist, very, very smart person. But when he talks about science and he answers people's questions, he's sharing them in stories and he's sharing the information. But the excitement and the realization makes you receiving the info arrive at the same time as he's giving the conclusion. And so you learn science from him and you don't feel stupid. You don't feel dumb for asking the questions. You're actually like, wow, this guy's incredibly knowledgeable. And so there's that high level of trust. I learned this not from someone else. I learned this by listening to other speakers speak, because people speak in completely different ways. You have people who speak at TED and TEDx. You have people who are doing master classes and presentations. You have coaches who speak. You have managers who speak. But when we take a look at who am I actually listening the message from, who am I fully receiving the message and I'm actually remembering it, who is memorable afterwards, you're going to find the commonality as you came to the conclusion at the same time that they did. So, in speaking, we want to make sure that when we are speaking to someone, we're helping them get to that conclusion at the same time. How do you do that? You do that through storytelling. Here's the thing, though, with storytelling. Most people get too sucked into their story, so much so that the story is more for them than it is for the person listening. It is strategic storytelling. And this is where I will say a really great line from a gentleman who I got some consulting on for me writing my book. He said, people don't care about the story. They care about your revelations and the conclusions you got going through the story's experience. So you can take strategic parts of your life and you can give a piece of that story and say, here's what I learned through it, and here's how it benefited me. And then a person resonates through that. And that's really all I do. When I speak, I'm thinking to myself, what happened to me today or on a day-to-day basis? What happened to me this week? What happened with a client? And I share it in a way where people can connect. I speak to where people are, because if I speak to where you are, then I can speak to where you can go. If I speak too far away, it makes it feel like this person's way too far from me. I can't get there. And if I speak too far behind, you're going to feel like you've already heard this information. Maybe you're going to make assumptions and you're going to stop listening. So what does this have to do with authentic voice and authentic messaging? And this is where, my first story comes in. When I became a personal trainer at the very beginning, there was a person or professional who I had worked with, where every single time I came off the call, I said to myself, that was so great. I'm going to write everything he said down word for word, and then I'm going to start showing up with other people, and I'm going to start using those words. And then every time he made an adjustment to my business, even though it wasn't fully in alignment with me, I was like, nope, this is exactly the way I'm going to do it because he told me I had to do it this way. And soon what ended up happening was I was running a business model that was the exact copy of his. I had all of my services, the exact same services that he had. I was using his same language, but then there was the energetic disconnect where because I wasn't him, I wasn't getting the same amount of sales. Because I wasn't him, the delivery of the clients was very different and their experience was different. Because I didn't have his team, the pre-qualification ended up being very clunky. And what I got were a lot of leads and a lot of clients and people saying things I really didn't want to hear. Like I was on consults where people said, man, I really just feel like this is a pitch. Like I'm just looking for support. And I was like, ooh, that stings. Or people on pre-qualification calls where when I was talking with them, people would ask me, is this a script? And at one point I was proud of it. I was like, yes, this is a script. But then there became that separation where I thought to myself, I'm not generating the business that I want. I'm not fully aligned in the way that I'm running this business. So the question is, why am I doing it? And here's the thing about finding your own authentic voice is it's not just how you share your stories or how you talk, but it's the actions you take and the way that you live your life that all contribute to your level of authenticity. You see, if I'm just focused on being the carbon copy of my coach, of control every single thing that he does, of course, I'm not him. So it's not going to be the same experience. Being an authentic person and having your authentic voice is you stepping into 100% of who you are, building a business that matches your lifestyle, having services that are in alignment with the way you want to provide them, building a team the way you want to build a team, because it looks different for every single person. So after I realized that there was that energetic disconnect, I said to myself, this is where I have to make the change. So the very first thing that I changed were my services. I didn't like that everything was large volume where we had, 15 people in one class at one time. There was no personalized service. So I cut it back and I started doing semi-private training at 4 people, really focused on customized care, and everyone had an individual plan. When it came to my team, I realized I had a lot more coaches than I really needed to, of course, to handle the volume, and I really didn't have enough admin support to make sure these coaches felt supported. So I went against the grain of the model, and I actually did the reverse. I had way more admin staff and way less coaching staff. And the first time I shared that information with the coach, he was like, what? But that's not the model. No, it's not your model, it's my model. And this is where being authentic started to then pay off for me. What I saw was my pre-qualification was done better because I had more people to do it. What I saw is we were able to pivot away from the scripts because people were more in alignment with their roles. What I saw was clients got better service because I was delivering in a way that was more in alignment with me and that made more sense business-wise. And also by making those changes, I was also able to change my margins. Instead of paying coaches a really expensive rate, I was able to pay admins a rate that was half that and get a better quality service. All of the sudden, I went from having a large volume facility to a boutique training studio that did nutrition, did hormone support, did training, where we had people at each coach capped at 4 people, where we did semi-private and private training, and where we became a high-ticket facility where my average client was paying $1,100 a month for our services. That is the difference. Being authentic means that you have to operate in a way that is in alignment with you. So just like my speaking feels very natural and very organic because I do it my own way, your business is going to feel very natural and very organic if you do it in a way that's in alignment with you. Here's the key though. You have to know what's in alignment with you. You have to know what authentic really looks like. So you have to take a second and you have to sit down and say, what does my authentic way of living, what does my authentic voice actually sound like? And maybe you haven't heard it in a long time. It's easy for me for speaking because I've only ever heard my authentic voice. I share through stories. I'm very off the cuff. I'm very direct. I like to do cheesy jokes. I share little bits and pieces of my life. And when I do that, people go, oh, wow, it's very real and it's very approachable. But when it came to my business, I remembered for a very long time, 6 years, I had no idea what my own voice was. I sold a specific way because my coach said it would be best. I marketed the same generic ads because I was told that was the industry standards. I set my prices to the same prices, which were very bare bones for my area because I was told and I was under the assumption that was the model. That's just how you had to run it. So sometimes it's not going against the grain. Sometimes it's really just checking in and saying, what is my authentic self telling me? And this is where the most beautiful thing about the practitioners we help inside of the Coach to Coach program is everyone has a different business. Like I just signed on a client. We did our 3-hour power block call yesterday. Actually, I don't think I've talked about the power block call. For those of you who don't know, the power block call is like when I onboard a client, we sit down for 3 hours and we go over everything. Numbers, metrics, profit margin, where you're getting your clients from, where leads are coming from, churn rate. We go and we look at all your systems, your offers, everything. And that gives us a very great idea of then where we start to tackle because everything that we do is custom. But I signed on a client just yesterday who his sole goal is to be a full-fledged business owner. He no longer wants to be a practitioner. He wants a full team that's taking care of that. He wants a general manager at some point to be able to be on. And he goes, the only things I love doing is the sales calls, the consultations, and a little bit of accountability. Perfect. Then we're going to build out the roles a little bit differently than some of our other clients. Like I have clients who go, you know what? I really want to be a practitioner. I want to continue to be a practitioner. So then it's more admin staff, assistant practitioners, where they can help them facilitate that. The goal changes, but where I had the ability to really ask and find out where this gentleman's authentic self was just taking the moment to say, what the heck do you want for yourself in your business? And he said 3 things very simply. He's like, I don't want to be inside this business anymore. I want to be a business owner. I don't want to be inside it. Okay, cool. What is the second thing? He goes, I want a team I can manage, not a team I can handle. And there are differences. A team you can manage is when you have 2 to 3 people reporting to you and they take care of the whole team. Versus a team you can handle is when you are the touch point and anchor point of everyone else. That structure that looks very, very different. The third thing that he said is, I want steady recurring revenue. I want to know that when I wake up and it is the first of every single month that there's $20,000-$30,000 in recurring revenue before sales happen that month. And I said, cool. Now that I understand what you want, now that I understand your vision for your business, where do you see yourself personally? Traveling, playing different sports. He's a Magic the Gathering fan like me, which is really awesome. Like doing other fun stuff outside of, he's in a band as well too, which is really incredible, playing in his band. He wanted to do other things outside of building a business. Now we can build something that is authentic and uniquely his. Now we can look at changing the teams, the systems, and the delivery so that way we can match that vision. So when he's bringing clients on, he's aligned with the way he's doing it. When he's operating inside of his business, it's no longer wearing him down because his capacity isn't how much can I take on, it's what are the exciting things that I get to do? What do I get to choose instead of what do I have to choose through building this model? Being authentic means, though, you have to know what that is. Now, here's the thing. Besides the fact that you have to know what you want, both inside of your business and for your personal life, you also have to know what filter you're currently seeing your life from. And this for a long time, like I didn't have a filter when I spoke, which was great because I didn't have to take a filter off. But there are a lot of instances in my life where I had to remove a filter, where I had to remove the way that I was speaking from because I sounded too much like someone else or I operated too much like someone else. And this is where it's like, where are the filters in our lives? What are other people's expectations that we feel like we have to adhere to because they're a part of our life? Where are some of the stories or the old identities that we are viewing life from that prevent us from living our authentic selves? Great example for a really long time, and I'm actually still working on this story. For me, I'm like, creating content online is very, very difficult. Like that's actually a story that I held for myself for a very long time, that it's hard to create content, that it's hard to show up on social media, that social media is not for me. I had tons of lenses and perspectives that actually prevented me for a really long time from being authentic, creating videos like this and sharing on my socials because I would then do everything through that lens. So if I go, no one is seeing this, it's not valuable, it's not beneficial, I have to say something in a specific way, then through all of that, my authenticity is lost. And this is where we all have lenses, identities, and stories that we tell ourselves that are preventing us from being fully authentic inside of our business, from being able to speak and live our truth. What are some of the lenses inside business? The first lens is like, this is the only way to deliver client care well. That's a lens that a lot of practitioners tend to see. They're like, this is the only way to deliver client care well. No, I have seen every single way to deliver client care work. In-person work, hybrid works, virtually works, self-paced courses works. Everyone learns in different ways and everyone can benefit from an infinite amount of services. The big thing is, which one do you find joy in? So there's the first lens. The second lens is selling is bad. Where they're like, no, you know what? I don't want to be that person who's like a pushy salesperson, or I don't want to feel compelled to have to sell a certain amount of people per month. That's a story you're telling yourself. That selling is sleazy, that getting people signed up and committed to their goals or working with you in your facility is something that feels icky or feels forced. It's not. There are so many health pros that work under us inside of the Coach to Coach program that selling is so easy. It's just a conversation. And it's the same way like when I'm having conversations with people inside of Coach to Coach. What are your goals? What are you looking to achieve? Hey, here's what we do. And if you think it's a good fit, let's work together. That's pretty much it. It's not a hard process, but you have to remove those stories and you have to remove that lens. Another aspect as well too is that the only way to make money inside of the health industry is to trade your time. It's not. Trading time is maybe the start of a lot of the business models, but even still, at some point, you cannot continue to trade your time. There's not enough hours in the day. And this is when you're taking a look at the roles that you're doing. You're doing admin, you're doing lead follow-up, you're doing content creation, you're also doing sales, but then you're also being the practitioner or the coach, and then you're also being the accountant or the bookkeeper. There's a reason why all of those professions are separate careers. It's because it is impossible for you to do that all the time. The number one goal inside of all of our pros, inside of C2C, is for them to become the business owner, for them to actually separate themselves and take themselves out of the business. The only way to do that is to recognize that trading your one-on-one time is not the solution, because it's not. There's a limit to how much you can charge per hour. There is a limit to how many people you can fit in your facility. There's a limit to the cap that you can grow your team, until at some point you have to have other people to help you. This is why employees exist. This is why job roles and positions were created, to help offset that. And all of that can make sense if, again, you're open to changing the model and you're open to building that team. And I can tell you, the people who are open to building that team, wow, what a freaking difference. Like, I remember the first employee I hired. It was an admin, it was virtual, and they were, I think, working 22 or like 24 hours a week. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. It's going to cost me $1,500 a month. And that $1,500 a month bought me back 22 hours in my time. And I was then able to sell more, get more leads, network more, and do the things that I enjoyed doing. And that was the first time I recognized in that moment, holy cow, I get to do more of what I like. And that's where you get to live your authentic life. That's where you get to say to yourself, if I could delegate this to someone, if I could build the business model my way, if I could create my dream team, could I authentically be me? And the answer is always yes. The answer is yes. It's right in front of us, but we have to separate from those lenses and we have to remove the stories. But see, here's the thing. Just like when we hire a coach, we fall in love with the coach and the mentor, which is why it's hard for us to take away their filter. We also fall in love with the stories and the identities that we create. And this is where you tell yourself for a really long time, I'm not a good speaker. Or I'm not a good salesperson, or building and establishing my business is hard. Being in a relationship or having a kid while managing my business is very difficult. We fall in love with that story. We give it power. And in giving it power, it means we lose the ability to change those things. My mentor shared with me, where you point to is where the power goes. So if I'm pointing and I'm blaming something else, or I'm saying, hey, this is why, I am giving power over to that. Ultimately, it all comes down to you. But going back to the speaking perspective, me being authentic is a combination of me using the tools of mentors, but me also recognizing that authenticity means that I have to show up in truth, that I have to show up to give, and that I have to be open to receiving. That's what makes me a good speaker, and it's also what makes me a good business owner. If I'm speaking from truth, I don't have to think. I don't have to alter anything. I just get to show up and talk. And if you notice, there are some aspects in your business where when you're all in, and usually it's the client delivery, when you're working with clients or when you're taking clients on, you don't have to overthink. You don't have to second guess. You just get to show up and you just get to speak your truth. And that's great. And that's the easiest part. It's one of the easiest parts about building business. Live your truth, speak your truth, and business develops less friction over time. Now, the second thing is give. So many times inside of business, we are always doing things with a condition. I'm going to market this way in the condition that it gives me leads. I'm going to work with this mentor in the condition that they develop a result. I'm going to change my business model in the condition that it's going to give me more time. Everything is conditional. When you do something with a condition attached from it, you are removing the ability for you to be able to see the result. Most things that happen inside of your life, you will never know how that thing comes to you. It's impossible for you to know what the end result is going to be. Now, yes, there are decisions that we have to make inside of marketing, inside of lead. Like, we can get really logical on, like, if you run an ad and you're not generating the amount of views, you can change the landing page. Like, we all know that. That, of course, 100%. But The key with giving is you have to be open to give first before you can receive. Receiving is the last piece of this. Many of us conditionally give because we say, I am not willing to give my time, energy, effort. I'm not willing to over-deliver. I'm not willing to train the employee. I'm not willing to take the time to build the systems unless I know a result is going to appear. That's not the way life works. A large reason why speaking is something that people connect me with is because when I speak, there's no objective. The sole thing that I'm focused on when I'm speaking is sharing the message. It's why every week when I do that 3 to 5 minutes of core values, people go, man, when you talked about building relationships, I was like, yes, and I went and I told my wife. When you talked about giver's gain, I went and I talked to my employees about giver's gain and I told them to go and call 3 other of our clients. When you talked about building trust among members and among referrals, I went and I thought to myself, where can I build more trust today? They did it because the message didn't have an objective. I wasn't searching for an outcome. I just said to myself, I'm going to live through my truth. I'm going to give value and someone is going to connect with it. Someone somehow is going to do something with this. And if you take a look at all of the most successful business people, they give a shit ton of value. They're hopping on dozens of podcasts. They're doing tons of free masterclasses. They're writing books that they're giving away when they're doing speaking events. They're being flown out and they're not charging for their speaking. They're just like, hey, look, just buy enough books to cover my flight. They do this stuff because they know that in some way, shape, or form, the energy will come back to them. And the best part is they get to be 100% authentic, which actually attracts and magnetizes people to you. If you want more clients and more leads, continue to give. People will just flock to you like crazy. And then there's that third piece, receiving. You have to be open to receiving. I will receive opportunities, but I receive them in ways that I'm not looking for, in ways that I say I'm only willing to do business if I get business this way. And so opportunities come in my business in ways that I could never really count for. Like I was speaking and I did a masterclass with a payment processor, which was basically a guy who like processes payments for clinics and stuff. And it was so valuable. He's like, hey, I have a connection with a bunch of acupuncturists. It's one of the governing bodies. And you can do masterclasses for them. They have 660 people. Holy shit. Now, if you had told me I'm only going to do this value for you to connect me to them, it would have never worked because I'm trying to force the way I'm receiving something. Being authentic is really about stepping in and saying, if I'm going to give, I'm going to be open to receiving whatever opportunity, and I'm going to capitalize on that opportunity. This is where we have to be willing to have innovation in our lives. We have to be willing to innovate. Now, the word innovation, it comes from a word which is called innovare. It actually means to renew or to remake. So just like inside of our businesses, we have ways and we have times where we have to innovate. This is going to give you the perfect opportunity for you to say, look, if I want to be able to live in truth, if I want to be able to give unconditionally, and I also want to be open to receiving tons of these opportunities so I can be authentically me, we're going to have to innovate the way that we're doing our businesses. You're going to have to remodel your business, maybe alter the model that you have, maybe bring on new teammates, maybe let go of some old teammates, maybe change the way of your services and your offerings, also that way you can live your most authentic self, whether that's take yourself out of the business, build more stable recurring revenue, or have a team where that you're just being supported as the practitioner and everyone is working around you. But I wanted to do this episode to share, you have to first ask yourself, what is the definition of your authentic self and are you living it? I'm very fortunate, and by fortunate, it's not lucky. Like I took the time to do this, but I'm very fortunate that there's all of these areas in my life where I am living authentically me, because there's times where I wasn't. I live authentically me when I speak and I do presentations. I'm authentically me now the way that I'm running coach to coach in this business. I wasn't authentically me when I had my supplement company, when I had my in-home training company, when we had our studio, because I was always outcome driven, trying to force things, running a business with models that weren't mine, trying to create their outcomes. I also wasn't authentically me with a lot of my friends and a lot of the people that saw me on social media, because I thought to myself the only way to build my business was to have business Andrew, I had to have personal Andrew, I had to have friend Andrew, and they were treated as three separate people, which was three separate masks I had to practice putting on and off. And it got to when I moved my company online, where we started to do the online hormone coaching, where I said to myself, I don't want to live this fragmented self anymore. I don't want to feel like I have to talk through a filter or pull back on what I have to say. I want to speak truthfully, and I want to have people go, when I hear Andrew, I know it's actually him. And sure, sometimes I do episodes on this podcast that are more structured than others because I really want to hammer down a point. But then there's other episodes where I just free flow and I talk like this. All of this is who I am, but it's all 100% authentically in alignment with me. So you have to take a look at first, when it comes to your level of authenticity, how authentic are you being with the things that you're doing on your day-to-day basis? Are you truly living 100% authentically in the way that you want to? Is the way you're running your business right now your absolute dream? Forget about, are you making money? Like, that type of stuff always ends up being secondary. Remember, 3 businesses that I did, 3 separate businesses, all of them made me money. All of them made an impact. All of them didn't make any sense for me when it came to authenticity. So we can be authentic. We can be true. We can be real. That's going to connect with more people. That's going to fire up your team and get them supercharged to work with you. That's going to get more results for your clients when they know that they can actually learn who the real you is. And that's going to allow you to become a business owner instead of just being a practitioner. So that's what I wanted to share within this episode. And hopefully you guys took a little bit away in regards to speaking as well too. One more thing that I actually want to share for speaking, because for some of you who are like, look, I want to be a better speaker. I also noticed as well too that the majority of people who speak do something that's called the hero's journey. And again, this is what they teach literally everybody. Like Alex Hormozi does the hero's journey. Who's the ClickFunnels guy? Oh my God. Oh geez, Louise. Who's the ClickFunnels guy? I can see his face. Anyways, the guy who runs ClickFunnels, it's going to be an earworm, but it's going to get, if you're watching the video right now and you're like, ooh, ClickFunnels guy, literally drop his name in the comments and then I don't know, dub this over. So I won't dub it over, but at least the people will know. But it's like the gentleman who runs ClickFunnels. Oh man. No, we can't move past this. It is, I'm going to look it up. I'm going to do something I've never done on this podcast before. And I'm going to pull out my phone and I'm going to look up the ClickFunnels guy. And once I see it, it's going to be a ClickFunnels guy. Come on. Russell Brunson. There we go. Oh man. Right? Like Russell Brunson. They're like Tony Robbins, right? A lot of the hero's journey is basically, in speaking, is the story starts off good. It's always good to great. Starts off good, ooh, tragedy or challenge. Then the hero goes on a journey of reflection, a journey of overcoming an obstacle. Usually there's 2 or 3 obstacles. One obstacle is external. Here's some of the things happening on my life. The other one is internal. Here's some of the things happening with me. I don't believe in myself. I don't think that I can do it. And then there's the pinnacle of the story, which is like the confrontation. This is like, now I'm here to slay the dragon. And everyone's like, oh, will he slay the dragon? Or she? Will she slay the dragon? And then once that happens, you go, boom, now we're on the other end. Here's the greatness. And then here's what I learned. That's the hero's journey. The problem with that inside of speaking, and it's not really a problem, it's more of a challenge. The challenge with that inside of speaking is most people can predict the hero's journey. So like I said at the very beginning, if they get to the end before you do, they're going to stop listening. And so I used to share the hero's journey a lot, and I used to get a lot of people's eyes glaze over because you're spending a lot of time repeating the Hallmark movie instead of actually doing something that's authentically you. So now I just focus on really what is the revelation I had, what is the challenge that I experienced in the moment, and then what did I change? For me, revelations come in different ways. Sometimes revelations come in realizations like, wow, I just realized there's a better way to do things. Sometimes revelations come with some really, really big struggles. Like it's a very hard day. You're driving down and you're like, I can't do this again. A revelation can be positive. It can be negative. And that's what keeps it unpredictable. Then we go into the challenge. The challenge shows up in a myriad of different ways. Internal, external, mental, physical, emotional. We can be very specific with the challenge. And that's where when I talk about the story, only share enough about the story to tell them what matters. And then move into, of course, the change. What did you change? What did you do? What changed for you? What result changed? And that gives you a hero's journey style story without predictability. Because here's the thing, life is very unpredictable. It's the same thing like this episode. Through this entire thing, if you can tell me, hey, look, I predicted this, then you're a wizard, Harry. Because there's no way that in listening to this, you would have known what was coming next. And this is how you know it's genuine. It's how you know it's authentic. So I would encourage every single one of you listening to step in and be more of your authentic self. Where can you be more authentic? Where can you show up the same way that I'm showing up as a speaker, where you can just show up, speak from truth, give freely, and be open to receiving whatever is there? You'll be surprised because a lot can change. The way you get leads can change. The way you sell. How many sales you actually make, how long your team members actually stay, the culture of your team, how quickly your business scales. All of these things are impacted not just by the SOPs and the systems and your level of work ethic. It also is impacted by your alignment and your level of authenticity. So that's all I want to share for this episode, guys. We are actually going to be doing, and I am going to talk about it in this episode finally. We are doing a new series. For those of you who do not know, you don't follow me on anything else, we already have an episode or a series, not an episode. We already have a series called Tea and Teachings that I do with my wife that we do regularly once a week, and we're going to be doing that moving forward. We have a new series that's going to be coming out that's going to be every Friday at 12:30, and it is going to be almost like a coffee open chat just business between me and my wife, where we talk about some of the behind the curtains and behind the scenes revelations of running our business, making business and life decisions. Because I also realize one thing that I actually haven't been sharing on the channel, and it's sharing more of me. I'm always conscious trying to help you guys grow your business, but business is just one aspect and facet of your life. I mean, if you think about it, there's relationships, there's community, there's your spirituality, there's finances. Like, what do you do when you build a business and you actually have a bucket ton of money? What the heck do you do with that? Or Andrew, what is it that you do with that? I want to answer all of those questions. How do I approach spirituality? How do I approach my finances? How do I approach difficult conversations or different conversations with friends and family? This is all the stuff that we're going to be sharing in the series. And the best part of that series is my wife is going to be on it too. She's going to give a really great feminine perspective on the way she approaches things, because we are two different people. I tend to be more logical, more I would say conditional. I look at all the facts. I'm very objective. My wife is more free flow. And I feel like whenever her and I are having conversations, whether it's our car conversations, whether it's like 8:30 at night when both her and I have teas, the stuff that we say behind the scenes there is so valuable in itself. I recognize it belongs on the Coach to Coach podcast. It belongs in its own series. So I would encourage you guys to subscribe to the Coach to Coach channel and make sure that you select to turn on notifications so you can start getting more of the series and of course more of the Coach to Coach episodes in your inbox. But there's going to be more on that later. I'm actually going to be creating a page for it just so you can see what's involved. And I'm going to create, just like we did a watch party list, because people thought the watch party setup was great. I'm going to do the same thing with this series. So if you want to get the notifications for the series and the reminders of when we go out, we go live, so you can hop on and join us live, then you can sign up to be a part of the watch party for that new series as well too. I will of course drop the link on both my Facebook and my Instagram, and I'm going to drop it below this episode. That is an official end to this episode, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe, of course, to the Coach to Coach channel, and we will see you on the next one. Bye for now.